So welcome to the Kanban Coaching Exchange. Happy New Year, everyone. First of the year, very exciting times. So I'm very pleased tonight to have Thomas Epping joining us all the way from Munich. And Thomas is a prevalent member of the Kanban community. He's an Agile, accredited Kanban consultant. I've got Agile on the mind, who specializes in not only Agile, but Kanban as well. And he's offered to come and do a talk for us tonight. And the title of it really intrigued me. And I don't know about you, organizations are always saying to me, you know, we need to go faster, but actually maybe we need to slow ourselves down a little bit. So I'm very pleased to welcome Thomas tonight. So take it away, Thomas. I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for introducing me. And so welcome all. Thanks for joining. I hope the sound works.
All good. All good.
You'll have to do with a German accent, but well, that's it. So I'll just share my screen. And I think we are ready to go. Yeah, we'll talk about exploring slowness a bit in this hour. But before we talk, I've just set up two reminders to myself to remind you, first of all, that there will be surveys. So I've included 3 surveys into this talk. So I think with about 20 people joining, that's yeah, justified. And if you want to prepare for these surveys, you can visit this page, either by just using the QR code or visiting the link. And I think, yeah, it's just coming up in the chat. Thanks. And the other reminder is that this talk is divided into 3 parts. So hopefully, if we just make it in time, there will be some minutes after each talk where we can just raise questions, discuss things, or whatever's necessary. And having said this, yeah, we can actually start by exploring slowness. And for starters, we'll have a look at a fictional conversation. And this is a conversation between just some customer is on the left side. And this customer requests a feature from some company, and the company is on the right side. So the customer just knocks on the door and basically tells the company, I need something from you. I need some, let's call it a feature X. And then the company, well, does nothing, doesn't respond. And the customer asks again after a few days, so what about X? Well, company responds this time, well, we haven't got to it yet. So after some time, customer again asks, what about my feature? And then the company wakes up, does things, so whatever's necessary, and tells the customer, okay, it's done now. So guess what? Well, the customer, well, doesn't thank the company, but, well, just says, oh, I'm sorry, too late. And I guess that's a sorry, not sorry. So, and I'm using this introductory example to just illustrate if this happens a few times, so one after another, then in my experience, after some time, some manager will just, well, basically stand before a team and will say the magic words, we need to go faster. And just for orientational purposes, I would like to know if you can relate to that scenario, or if you, well, haven't heard these words. I think Helen can.
Every week I hear these words, Thomas, every week.
Yeah, great. So, yeah, I did hear them often, and I think I will be using them quite a lot in this talk. And as I said, the talk is divided into 3 parts. So the first part will be about some basics, and this, well, will be really pretty basic, but, well, bear with me. And we'll start by trying to look well behind the curtain. We'll just try to imagine how this company, who did not manage to satisfy customer in time, how they might be organizing themselves. So, and in the most simple form that I can imagine, there might be a team, or one, or two, or three, a few teams actually, who are using some kind of visualization, typically some kind of board to organize themselves. Yeah, just maybe a simple to-do, doing done board. And everything that needs to be done goes into the to-do column. Everything the team or the teams are working on goes into the doing column. And then as soon as something is finished, well, it goes into the done column. I actually see this pretty often. Sometimes with a twist, and some because someone noticed that, well, it's not possible to work on things continuously. So sometimes items or features, whatever, get blocked or are waiting on someone or something. So some teams introduce such a blocked or waiting column. And interestingly enough, if these team use some kind of electronic tool that's not able to model this setting, the blocked waiting column goes after the doing column. And when someone from the outside, so like me, visits a team, and that's why I'm telling you this, it's quite amusing, because it appears that being blocked or just waiting for things is, well, part of a regular workflow. I'm always curious when I'm seeing this, if it's just a tool or if the teams actually expect to be blocked. But it's not about tools. I'm just using this very simple setup to introduce some terms. And the first one is touch time. So touch time basically is the time when people are working on things. And then we have wait time, and that's basically the time where people are waiting for whatever reason, because something's blocked or they need to wait for decision or whatever. And if you sum up all these times, touch time and wait time, you basically have lead time. It's usually good to actually define where you start to measure your lead time, where your measurement ends. But well, let's just say for today, basically it's the sum of all touch time and wait time along your value chain. This is a Kanban coaching exchange. So of course there's a reference to a Kanban book, and that's the white book, the essential Kanban condensed book. And these three terms are in there. And if you look them up, if you just browse the book, then you'll notice that, of course, there are formulas, and the quite famous one is the one that gives you how to compute the lead time. And that's basically a little law who says that under certain circumstances, your average lead time is just your average work in progress divided by your average delivery rate. Sorry. So basically, if you increase your WIP, then you can expect your lead time to go up, and if you decrease your WIP, then you can expect your lead time to go down. And there's another one, so flow efficiency, that relates touch time and wait time. And basically your flow efficiency is your touch time, or sum of all your touch time divided by the sum of all your touch time and wait time. That's usually given in %. So if you're close to 100, that basically means that you have no wait time in your process. It's very unlikely. And if you're close to 0 or 1 digit %, that probably means that you had lots of wait times in your process. So, as I said, some basics, some basic terms, we will be using these. And Here's a personal note. I've named this a personal note because that's not general wisdom. It's just my experience. Your experience might differ. But in my experience, such generic boards that we've just been looking at tend to be appropriate for very either inexperienced or very experienced environment. So what I usually see are teams that are just getting started with visualization, and they quite often start with a very generic board. Sometimes I see very experienced teams who just don't need any more visualization because they just have been working together for a very long time. Either way, so these boards hardly allow any statement about wait time, lead time, and touch time. So I don't consider them very useful if you actually want to have a detailed look in your workflow. So here's another type of board. Let's call this a more sophisticated type of board with lots of stages. I've just made up some names. Yeah, that's where usually the heads are bent. And one interesting thing is that whenever I see such boards, most of the names indicate some kind of wait time. So if you just try to read these made up captions of these columns, they all indicate some kind of wait time. Some things are ready for something, or someone's waiting for something. And only a few columns actually indicate that there's a touch time in that. So that's, in my experience, is quite common. That the number of columns who indicate wait times exceeds the number of columns who indicate touch time. But well, let's see what your world looks like. So here's a question. If you're using a board, or if you're consulting teams who use a board, so what's your board design? What's the design that you're seeing the most? Is it a simple to-do doing done board, or is it a board with at least a waiting or blocked column, or is it a more sophisticated board? Maybe it's something different. Maybe you don't use a board. Would be interesting to know. So I just start poll. You're welcome to join, and I'll just wait for a few seconds and see if any results are coming in. Okay. Was wondering if no one uses it to do doing done board. So I'll wait a few more seconds. Oh, okay, and maybe we have something to discuss after this part, because some of you doing something different or are not using a board at all. Okay, thanks. I'm just closing this one. I'm always asking this because it just gives me a very rough impression, yeah, about the audience. And I've asked this question before at different meetups, and well, to give back here are the results from previous surveys. And it might be interesting to know that the red one and the green one, so the second one from the left and the right one, these are conferences or meetups related to the Kanban community. So KCD means the Kanban Community Days, and LWS, that's the Limited Web Society in Cologne. And it might be no coincidence that these communities indicated that they're using boards quite a lot that allow you to distinguish between touch time and wait time. Not sure. I'm still collecting some data, so thanks for contributing. There's also, if you're interested more on board designs, in the State of Kanban report. So you can look into these. I think it's out for a few weeks or a few months. I'm not quite sure, but it's still pretty current. And to close this part, yeah, I'll just finish with a short illustration that goes back to flow efficiency. When you have such a sophisticated board with lots of wait times for whatever reason, you know, waiting for decisions, maybe having some buffers or handover stages. Whenever I get to have the opportunity to measure flow efficiency, I try to do so. And I lately did get the opportunity, and I've been working with a team who did work in sprints. And I just managed to measure the flow efficiency along a single sprint. And that's, well, probably not a perfect measurement, but it's, well, let's say close to 20% flow efficiency. And then we managed to uncover more upstream and downstream stages. So basically stages of activities before the sprint starts and after the sprint has ended. And measured again. And interestingly enough, so along the complete value chain, flow efficiency was down to, well, something between 2 or 3%. So close to zero. That leads me to my next personal note. Again, your experience might differ, and that is along a complete value chain, such a single-digit flow efficiency is the rule rather than the exception. Would be interesting to hear your experiences. And that's already the end of part 1. So if there are questions, if you'd like to, well, comment on anything, I think we can spare a few minutes for that.
A quick question. So 22.5% flow efficiency, that's like pretty mega compared to some of the things that I've seen. So, but also I've had other people come to me and they've used tools like Actionable Agile, other tools are available. And the flow efficiencies in there says something like about 50%, but that's because they're not kind of like realistically showing all of the waiting versus working times on their boards. So was 22.5% realistic?
Well,
so I can weigh in a little bit on that. It depends on how much of your value stream you're looking at, because if you're looking at a full value stream all the way from discovery / intake to delivery into production, especially if you've got a large organization and other compliance constraints, if you will, it's actually uncommon to get more than 10%. If you're looking just at a local team, though, it's possible to get a lot better. Usually I use it as an organizational measure. So there's going to be interesting bottlenecks and delays all over the place when it's a very large organization. And I use it to determine, okay, where are the systemic issues? You know, is it downstream of dev? Is it upstream? And so on, so that we can determine where best to invest as far as process improvement.
Yeah, I agree, because you don't want to be like measuring apples and oranges against each other, do you? Because you want to be looking at the same sort of thing. So it's good to point that out. And agree, I like to look at the whole value chain, and I like to do value stream mapping to understand the bits that are fast and the bits that are slow as well. Okay.
Yeah, so I also can relate to your comment. So for a single sprint, yeah, it's quite high, but it's possible, I think. But then along the complete value chain, I think having just a few % of flow efficiency, that's quite reasonable. Any more questions or comments?
We've got another question in the chat channel from John. How would you differentiate flow efficiency before the line of commitment versus after the commitment line?
Yeah,
Not quite sure if I understand the question.
Yeah, so when something has been refined and committed to, that's when the clock would start ticking on wait time and touch time. And you would get a very different efficiency flow percentage if you counted the first time that a customer said, I want blah, 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 which blah, blah, blah is completely incoherent. And so, I hear people, especially, David J. Anderson at Kanban University, making mention of the line of commitment, representing it on the Kanban board. And I would presume that you would measure those distinctly. But I don't hear people speaking of, this is our flow efficiency post line of commitment. This is our flow efficiency end-to-end before line of commitment.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just like the instrument generally putting timestamps all over the place, and then you can zero in on the perspective you're choosing. The flow, after the point of commitment, and okay, how long does it spend just in committee before anyone, brings budget, defines what team's going, because all of those have potential meaning, right? So just depends kind of on perspective.
I agree with Jeff. I just capture everything, and then you can have a little look at it. It's even interesting, like how long have things sat in queues for? Whilst it is before the commitment, in the customer's minds, it's still sat there and they've still asked for that thing. So collect everything.
I totally agree. Yeah.
In the lean world, sometimes you even discriminate between aspects of touch time. How much of it was set up versus actually adding the value, because if you're task switching, you tend to accumulate setup issues, because you got to switch context, you got to get your tool ready. But there are all kinds of ways that you might minimize setup and actually get the amount of value being added. I mean, among those might just be automation, right? That if you can turn it into a button, it's a minimum setup and maybe a minimum defect rate as well. But I always like to look at the steps and the opportunity to improve the value add time.
Okay, thanks. Any more comments, or can we move on to part number 2?
Let's keep trucking.
Okay. So how can we possibly go faster? We're already working over time. I've called this part perspectives, because we will be looking at the demand of going faster from 2 different perspectives. So the first one will be concerned with the actual meaning of going faster. So what does going faster actually mean? So what do people hear when someone tells them to go faster? And the second perspective will be all about where does the message of we need to go faster actually catches on? So who responds, or what responds to this message? I think this makes a huge difference, and we will be looking at some examples. So the first one, the meaning. Well, I do offer 3 different choices for the meaning of going faster. The first one is, well, to actually go faster. So which means going faster is all about reducing touch time. And then there's another one, and that's the meaning of going faster actually means working more. So longer and harder, maybe working over the weekends, that is actually not my preferred meaning of going faster, but that's something that I see quite often when someone tells a team, for example, to go faster. Then people are starting to work over time. And third meaning is the one that gives this talk its name. Yeah. And that's the meaning of we need to be less slow, so we need to reduce our wait time. So these are three different meanings of going faster that I have seen in practice, I think. And whenever someone stands in front of a team and just tells them to go faster, I think you can't be quite sure which meaning actually comes across. So, well, again, let's ask the audience. So what does the term faster mean in your organization? Does it mean people start to reduce touch time, or does it mean they start to work harder or longer? Or does it mean they start to reduce wait time? Maybe it means nothing, maybe it means something different. Again, if you like to, you're welcome to join the poll. I just need to pick the right one. Okay, just wait for a few more seconds. And there is at least a bit of a danger that I'm telling you nothing new, because some of you already are focusing on reducing wait time, but not all of you. So again, thanks for your answers. So this is what I've seen in previous surveys. It seems to vary across different communities, but there seem to be communities who will associate going faster with actually working harder or longer and reducing wait time. Well, some are doing it, but well, it seems to be kind of neglected. So I'm still not sure about the patterns of these surveys, but I'll keep doing them. So personal note number 3. So it's my experience that reducing wait time is a more effective lever towards reducing lead time than to focus on reducing touch time. So that's, for example, grounded in the observation that flow efficiency is typically quite low, and that means that wait times are typically quite high. So there's lots of more opportunities in reducing wait time than to in reducing touch time. And it might be interesting to add another perspective, and it's the second one I've been talking about in the introduction. So, and that's the perspective of where does this message of we need to go faster, or where does it actually catches on? So who responds to this message? And again, I offer you 3 different choices. The first one is that it's an individual who responds. So a single person hears this message and acts accordingly. And the second choice would be, an interaction response. So which basically means more than one people hears the message and then teams up with another one. And then these 2 try to respond to this message of going faster. And I've added a third choice, and that's the complete value chain. So this happens when someone speaks to a team and the whole team responds to this message. So there's no individual person who hears this message, but the team as a whole just responds. I've tried to make this more clear by adding questions. So in the first case, if a single person responds to the message, this person will try to answer the question, how can I reduce my lead time if I only care about myself? So, which basically means this person will ignore anything, well, to the left and to the right. Will just watch the things on their own desk and will ignore anything else. And if this demand to go faster, if this catches on in an interaction, and let's say a pair, let's say a pair of two people respond to this demand, then these two people will try to answer the question, how can we both reduce lead time for the two of us, if we both care only about the two of us? So again, they will ignore anything to the left and to the right from their desks, but at least there will be a pair. And if a, let's say, complete team responds to this demand, then the question will be, how can we all reduce lead time for all of us, if we all care about only all of us? So try to make these questions a bit awkward. That's by purpose, to make clear that there's a difference in perception. Okay, and now we can combine these two perspectives. I've just left out the going faster means working a longer part. And we'll try to look at some effects. So let's start with the combination of going faster means reducing touch time. And let's say that this message, well, catches on at a single person. So it's a single individual who responds to this message. This person feels the need to reduce their touch time, so to work faster. And one consequence of this might be that the person feels motivated to, well, let's say, cut corners, to work sloppily. So that's a good incentive. You will get faster by this. Quality will decrease, but that's, well, not the point in question. So when people start to neglect quality, that might be a sign that single persons are responding to the demand of going faster. And it might be a sign that someone has interpreted the message of going faster as to reduce their touch time. And this changes if the demand of going faster catches on in an interaction, because then two people are working together, and at least the first one in this pair has no incentive any longer to work sloppily, to cut corners, because the second one in this interaction, in this pair of people, will probably complain. So suddenly there's an incentive to work thoroughly. So whenever people are, well, inclined to increase quality, this might be a sign that the demand of going faster still is interpreted as reducing touch time, but has caught on in some kind of interaction between people and not a single person anymore. On the other side, the meaning going faster as the meaning of reducing wait time. Well, this being a Kanban coaching exchange, it's probably no surprise to hear that one means to do this is, or one means to respond to this is to focus on one thing at a time, to limit yourself. And here the interesting message is that this actually scales across the spectrum, from going from individual to the complete value chain. You can focus on one thing at a time as a single person. You can focus on one thing at a time when working in a pair. and you can focus on one thing at a time when considering the complete value chain. And I tried hard, but I did not find a corresponding example for such an action on the other side when going faster means reducing touch time. So I think there's a difference. And that leads me to my personal note number 4. And that basically says that a value chain focus opens up more effective actions for reducing lead time than a focus on individuals. Again, your experience might differ. But, well, let's have a next survey. So my question to you is, which of these perspectives gets the most attention in your organization? So that means when someone tells a team in your organization to go faster, is it a single person who responds? Or is there any change in interaction between people? Or does the team actually say, well, okay, we are all in this, let's think about going faster across our complete value chain? I'll start the next poll, and again, you're invited to join. So let's see. Again, I'll just wait a few more seconds. Okay, thanks. Again, thanks for answering. Seems that the attention is on the individual this time. Pretty obvious. So let's compare this with previous results. And there's, yeah, I think the value chain in third place. And sometimes it's been the individual, sometimes it's been the interaction. Again, it seems to depend on the community you are asking this question. Well, personal note number 5. So a good reason, in my experience, to focus on wait time is that it allows you to well, depersonalize things. Because you can discuss wait time in a value chain more easily than you can discuss how to, well, reduce touch time for a single person. So my personal note says that a focus on touch time tends to put an individual in the spotlight, and a focus on wait time tends to put a value chain in the spotlight. And I find it easier to discuss wait time in value chains than to discuss touch time and individual persons. Okay, so that's the end of part 2. Yeah, I think we have a few minutes if there are any comments, questions, remarks, whatever.
Maru had a question from part 1, which was around, what is a green conference?
Green conference, that's the conference with the green bar in the survey results. That's the Kanban community days.
Hopefully that helped, Maru. Give me a sign. Give me a sign.
Yeah, I just noticed the thumbs up. So
yeah, I think the KCD were the red ones. I was just wondering what kind of conference was that? What kind of community was the one with the green bar chart? They were very different from the others. Even though, you know, I assumed the sample size was not meaningful enough, but still. But it was not the KCD. The KCD was a different color. Green one was some some of the cryptic community. I don't know.
Any other questions at this point for Thomas? Oh, we've got one from John. You going to ask your own question, John?
Sure. So it's interesting, you know, this comparison of focusing on touch time versus wait time has an impact either across a value chain or in an individual. In my experience, I think that there's more often than not been drastic opportunities for improvement on wait times when compared to the level of opportunity for improvement on touch times, meaning the flow efficiency might be something like 8%, which was discussed earlier, such that, you know, you've got 70 some odd percent or more, maybe 80, 90% is wait time and only 10% or less is touch time. Therefore, the scale of opportunity is very drastically in the wait time. But that's not usually where most people focus in traditionally managed companies, I see. I'm curious if those observations or generalizations I've made, if those hold true for others.
Yeah, and the number that flow efficiency is commonly below 10%. Part of the reason our systems are not designed around the overall value stream, something that they do in a production line is they pay attention to something called takt time, which basically your rate of delivery will be determined by your slowest activity. You've got a similar situation in knowledge work as well. Now you have to look at things in aggregate because as things flow through the system, it's not always the same kind of work. There's requirements, then there's the actual code, you end up with deployable units, and then you have actual deployments. But if you're looking at the aggregate like you would see in a cumulative flow chart, and you're looking at it across the entire value stream, it should be easy to see where are we spending the most time. Now you have to surface the actual individual activities, but basically your slowest activity is going to determine your delivery pace. And you could potentially design, in fact, I've been places where we designed around the demand rate instead of just assuming that you needed to follow a common SDLC pattern. We had an organization where 30 days might be how long you normally expected, but it wasn't even a viable business unless we could figure out tooling and process and such that would get basic flow down to about 3 days. And we designed around that idea. I've been a few places where we did that actually.
Were you using a takt time construct inside of non-manufacturing?
It wasn't so much using the lean lexicon, if you will, but ultimately, you know, we looked at, okay, where do we spend most of our time? How much leverage can we create to reduce times, tools we can introduce, ways that we can take out overhead, and so on. One place, the first delivery, the boss said, okay, I'll let you have 6 months, but the next delivery needs to happen in 2. And then the next phase, I want to see basically 2 products out every month. So part of the ongoing thinking was, let's make sure we're designing the system so that it can produce at the actual rate of demand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answered your question.
I think so.
It's hard, but basically you're turning something that's assumed into something that's engineered, and you do it in manufacturing as well. There's design for manufacturing, or 3P, where you start with the knowledge that you need a certain rate of flow, or you're gonna struggle to be profitable.
Mhm. Yeah, I would imagine there's like there's maybe a predictability of lead time per step in the value stream, and that might influence how you design the entire system, right?
Yeah, and when you think about these different forms of waste, something that we commonly run into, you know, that you've got, what is it, Mira, I forget the three and what they all mean, but overburdening is one of them, you know, which you might relate to WIP, right? But overburdening on its own tends to create a lot of other kinds of waste. But you really need to kind of, I had a brainwave and it kind of got away from me. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, whether you were using takt time as a construct outside of manufacturing.
We were using the concept. I didn't use the word. Sometimes I avoid the words just because throwing a bunch of Japanese out there in front of people or lean concepts. Instead, I just like to demonstrate what it means, what its effect would be, that kind of thing. So we didn't use those terms necessarily. Some would say that's a manufacturing term, and then you get down in the weeds again instead of solving problems. But ultimately, that was the name of the game. And I'm in an organization right now where we have, you know, things that sit and wait for weeks because environments aren't available, or resources, people, external teams aren't available, and it makes me sad because I've seen what fantastic looks like. But if you can surface the data and show that your potential is good, that you're doing everything you can within, but you're really being held back by business partners or maybe the security scans downstream or anything like that, sometimes you can get them to invest in more resources.
I'd like to relate to the word data. So because there's a third part coming up, and this will be about data. So do we have any more remarks or comments that we need to address? Okay, if not, I'll just move on. Thanks a lot for sharing your experience and anecdotes. Quite interesting. So let's finish with part number 3. With the headline, this is all well and good. So what do we get out of it? And I've labeled this part context, because I like to put this demand of we need to go faster into some kind of context. And by this, I mean, it's kind of interesting if when you hear these words, we need to go faster, if you just will ask back, how fast are we going right now? Can you tell me that? And in my experience, most of the time people can't. They're just demanding to go faster, but they can't tell you how fast you are currently going. And they also can't tell you how fast you actually need to go. You can ask other things, what's currently slowing us down. And to answer all these questions, I'd like to recommend doing a very simple lead time histogram. So whenever I have the opportunity, I try to just measure lead time and then build a histogram from it. Just to explain, on the x-axis, that's the lead time, and on the y-axis, that's the number of occurrences. So when you have a bar, let's say, of size of height number of height 4, at a lead time of 8 days, that means that for a given month, there have been 4 items that did need a lead time of 8 days to be finished. And I think this is pretty easy to create, and you can use such data to, for example, well, to improve in retrospectives. And you can also use this data and convert it pretty easily into something that you can actually use to talk to customers. And that's when I like to remind you of the introductory example where there's been a customer who did demand a feature X and the organization just didn't respond. And if you're having such data, you can just respond to such demands by telling a customer, okay, so with a given probability, we're probably having your feature ready in about, let's say, 12 days with a 80% probability. Is that good enough for you? Or do you need to be more sure? Do we need to, well, do something about it? And then you can start having conversations. And that's, for example, something that's been missing in the introductory example. Customer and the organization just didn't talk about expectations. And of course, you can do this more than once. So if you're doing such measurements, you can just see how your speed changes over time. You can, well, start to understand yourself. You can start to eliminate reasons for being slow. So that's one of my usual recommendations. If you want to know where you are slow, or even why you are slow, then having such measurements could be a good idea. And that's pretty much all. So here's a quick summary of some personal notes and, well, the general advice to visualize touch time and wait time. So go beyond a very generic board. Try to set up boards that allow you to distinguish between touch time and wait time. And then use those boards to focus on wait time in value change. Do not focus on people, do not focus on touch time. And then start measuring speed within your value change and use these measurements to improve. Okay, that's basically all. Not sure if we have some more minutes left to discuss further things. I leave it up to you, Helen.
We always have time for questions, Thomas, don't you worry. So who's got a question in the room? Be brave, come off mute. I always wait 10 seconds, train a rule. If no one breaks in 10 seconds, then they haven't got a question. Well, I think you got off lightly there. No questions, Thomas. Are there tools out there that will do this thing for us? What's your recommendation for doing these types of exercises?
For measuring things?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd like to refrain from any tool recommendation. So it's
I like to do flow efficiency the good old-fashioned way, whap up a mural board, draw my columns on there, work out the times. But then again, I'm old school. Well, thank you very much for your time, Thomas. It's very good to hear about flow efficiency and the things that we can do to help us to start changing some of those behaviours and get us thinking about what does going faster really mean. So it's not a talk that I've actually had here before, so that's absolutely fabulous to hear. So let's give Thomas a big old round of applause. A warm thank you from the Kanban Coaching Exchange. Not as dramatic as in person, I have to admit, these days. But thank you. Thank you for giving up your time. So thanks to everybody else for popping on in. First time in the new year. Next month, we've got Tony Richards talking to us, so another accredited Kanban trainer and Agile coach. So please come and join us. If you've got a talk that you would like to do, drop me an email. I would love to have some of my regular communities and new people coming and giving us a talk, because there's loads that we can learn and share amongst each other. And that's what keeps making these communities great. So if you've got something that you'd love to share, drop me a line and we can see if we can hook you up. But if not, Happy New Year from Vlad and I, and it's great to see you all, and we'll see you again next month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.